Harvard did a research study on 3,000 leaders, managers, individuals working inside organizations, and they looked at the top performing ones and they wondered and asked, what was the number one skill they had? And it came down to this one word: associating. The ability to connect dots where people usually see differences. The ability to find parallels and similarities and synergies where other people only see divide and disconnection. We live in these echo chambers inside our organizations. We get lost around the same group of 3 to 4 people. We get lost in the same mini groups of people, and we don't expand our minds beyond that. People with broader networks, people who had people in their lives that were very different from the other people, were actually able to provide more creative, more productive, more effective ideas and solutions in the company, because they were able to look at things from multiple angles, different perspectives. How can we start to recognize that when we win and someone else wins, when we win together, when we're able to help and serve and support each other together, that so much more can happen?
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Jay Shetty, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, protect your purpose.
In the Manusmriti, which I talk about in Think Like a Monk, it's a monk book, and in the verse it says, when you protect your purpose protects you. Now, I want to unpack that. What I mean by that is, your purpose is like a rare jewel and a rare gemstone. And imagine you were walking around with the most expensive diamond or jewel in the world. How would you protect it?
You want to just like
wave
it out, yeah.
Yeah, you want to just wear it on your chest.
Like this.
Like a baby.
Holding it.
Yeah.
Putting a pillow around it, a blanket, you'd protect it.
You'd protect it. And so your purpose is like that. And guess what? Wow. People are going to tell you every day that that jewel is not worth anything. They're going to tell you that that jewel is actually valueless. It doesn't have any impact on your life. They're going to try and take away that value. They're going to tell you that there's another jewel out there that you need to have more value. And what ends up happening is I love the word, look at the wording, protect your purpose. You have to protect it. So what happens is your success grows, you get more opportunities, more ideas, more things coming your way. Temptations. But they can all take you away from your purpose.
Yeah.
Distractions. And to me, I'm repeating this for myself because I'm like, I just want to stick to what I was born to do. And I'm so grateful that I get to do it. I'm so happy I get to do it. And I want to keep protecting it. I don't want to get lost in the waves. You know, you don't want to just get chucked in the waves of the ocean and just get lost and just not know where you're going. So for me, when you protect your purpose protects you.
So that's been your biggest lesson?
That's my biggest lesson.
Why? Do you feel like your purpose has been maybe distracted in some ways?
I don't think it has. But I'm saying it so it doesn't. Like
You're reminding yourself.
Yeah, I'm reminding myself. Like I'm preaching to myself right now. It's
especially
like,
being in Hollywood and the temptation of all these opportunities out here.
Totally, and I think for me it's a bigger lesson also because it gives me more faith. So I always encourage, and this is actually this is why it's my biggest lesson. I encourage so many people that I coach, so many people that I mentor, obviously everyone in my community and audience and everything, to go and follow that, go and live that purpose. And I see time and time again that when I see people trying to live their purpose, they are protected, that things work. When you're playing in your dharma and your purpose, things work, things move, you feel momentum. They happen. And I'm not saying they happen without effort, but they happen, they move. Whereas when you're not, you just constantly feel like you're grinding up against, a wall.
Rule number 3, keep an open mind.
We will continue to create the life that we currently have with the current set of thoughts, wisdom, beliefs, and ideas that we have. And if we're happy on that path, if you could fast forward your life in 10, 20, 30 years' time, and you'd be satisfied with getting the life that you have right now, then that's great. But if, like the majority of people that I know and that I speak to and that I connect with online, the majority of us would look and go, no, I really want to change life. I want to be with my kids, but I want to change how I am with them. I want to be at work, but I want to be more present at work. I want to improve the quality of my life. then I'd say that it's so important that we learn and open up our minds to alternative thoughts. I'll give you an example. There was this great study that MIT did on people's minds' openness and their ability to be creative and innovative. And they looked at two types of people. One person was surrounded by people who all knew the same people, right? Kind of like our normal lives. And the other person was surrounded by lots of people who didn't know each other. And they did the study around who is more creative, more innovative, and has a bigger impact in the workplace, in their professional life, and then a little bit into their personal life as well. And what they found was that those people who knew each other, who knew them back, lived in what was known as echo chambers. They were rarely exposed to ideas that improved their way of living or their professional performance. But people who were exposed to ideas that had no connection with other people in their life were able to be more creative, have better ideas, have more purpose, have more meaning in life. So often we've become closed in our little spaces around what we hear, what we know about, and we're not exposed to this new sense of ideas. And that's what I would encourage, is just approach it with a tiny bit of curiosity. That's all you need.
Rule number 4, know your identity.
And our challenges arise by how we see ourselves. And what I believe Rangan's referring to is there's this quote that I begin my book with and that I've shared in interviews for the last few years. And it's from a writer named Charles Horton Cooley, who wrote this in the 1900s. And what he said is that, I think it's in the 1800s, at the end of the 1800s, towards the 1900s. And he said, and bear with me, and you've got to really listen closely to this. So what he said that the challenge today is, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. Now, just let that blow your mind for a moment. I will explain it, I promise. I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am, which means we live in a perception of ourselves. So I'll break it down. If I think Rangan thinks I'm smart, I'll say I feel smart. But if I think Rangan thinks I'm not smart, then I'll say I'm not smart. And so the challenge is that we're basing how we feel about ourselves on what we think someone thinks of us. And the greatest challenge with that is, how do you have any idea if what you think someone thinks about you is even true, and whether that's even the best place to start? So that's where our identity struggles. We start pursuing things in life because we think other people value them. It's almost like, let's think of the most playground version of this. If I remember wearing high-tech shoes from BHS to the playground, right? I remember my mom, because my parents didn't buy me Nike trainers or Adidas trainers, which I always wanted. You know, we didn't come from that background. I couldn't afford them, and my parents didn't want me to have them. So I'd walk in with my high-tech trainers from BHS. They were about 10 quid or whatever they were. and you know, to me, it didn't make a difference. I didn't really know at that time whether high-tech was good or bad. They were just trainers that my parents bought me. Now, everyone, the cool kid at school, had the latest Nike trainers. All of a sudden, I start thinking that he's now surrounded by everyone. Everyone's talking about his trainers. Everyone's giving him adoration. Everyone's giving him respect. Everyone's talking about his trainers. So now I think that if I want to have that same experience and love from people, that I need to get that. Not realizing that I may be able to get deeper love from people by being kind and compassionate. That I may actually be able to build a real relationship with people if I'm loving and considerate and empathetic. And it's so crazy how your life can become about pursuing something. And that's why Jim Carrey puts it best, and I'm paraphrasing. He says, you know, everyone in the world should achieve everything they've ever wanted and accomplish everything they've ever pursued, just to realize that it's not the point. Now, that doesn't mean the monk mindset is not about not pursuing your goals. It's actually about pursuing your truest goals, your truest self, and your most authentic, aligned goals. So it's not about not having goals. It's about making sure that your goals are actually yours.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, don't take failure personally.
I think one of my first things in failure is don't take it more personally than it actually is. And I'll give an example of that. When I was applying to 40 companies that all rejected me before an interview,
Yeah.
all I was getting was an automated response saying your application will not go any further. I can't take that personally because they didn't meet me in person. They didn't have a interaction with me. They just saw my name. They saw I'd been a monk for 3 years. That resume is useless. I mean,
Sure.
what's your transferable skills? Like
Right.
sitting in silence and stillness.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise, no one wants to hire a monk. And so they rejected you, but that's not personal because they didn't meet me in person.
But what if they had meeting you in person?
Right, so that's the first step. The first
Yeah.
step is don't take all failure. I'll give you an example. Me and you, we reach out to countless guests to be on our podcast.
Who say no all the time.
Who say no all the time. But if I don't hear a no from the guest directly, that's not a no. Like someone's team can say no, someone's assistant can say no, someone's PR team can say no. But until they say no personally, it's not a no.
Okay, but when they do say no,
Then that's a no. Yeah, so then let's move
so
to
how
that.
do you deal
Yeah.
with that type of failure?
Yes. So if I deal with a failure where someone meets me in person and gets to know
Like,
me.
no, Jay, you're horrible. You suck. Like, I don't want to deal with a monk ever in my life.
Yeah.
I would never go on your show. I'm never listening to you. Never.
Yeah.
Then how do you deal with that type of
So
failure?
I've heard you say this. I've said it a couple of times, and I'm sure it's been repeated a bunch of times around how I genuinely believe failure has feedback. It's
feedback,
and
yeah.
and so for me, it's like failure has the ability to actually tell you what you need to improve. Now, not to improve to get their attention, improving to get the actions that you want to take.
Yeah, the results you want.
The results
yeah.
you want. And
Yeah.
don't make that result about the person who said no. Don't use failure as a way to prove someone else wrong.
Because what happens when we prove others wrong?
When you prove others wrong, you end up trying to get validation and approval for them. And now if they're not impressed when you're right, you lose again. So you end up losing twice.
And you spend all this time and energy, years maybe, to prove someone wrong. I've been there many times.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I felt good for a moment.
Yeah.
And then I feel empty again.
Totally. And so that's the thing about failure in the second half is you have to see failure as an improvement. If I'm completely honest, everyone who rejected me in my life up until now has made me more hungry, taught me so much more about myself, and made me up my game.
Yeah.
And I think if failure doesn't make you up your game, it's the same as losing in a sport, right? When you fail and you've lost games and you've won games, you know, on the big stages,
You didn't have the skills, you didn't have the teamwork, you guys weren't hungry enough,
you weren't
whatever it is.
communicating enough.
There's something you were missing.
Yeah.
So you go review the game film, you check the stats, you see what could I have done better, and you try to improve that for the next game.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can do that in life, but we're so afraid to like go on the next game of life. Like I got rejected once and it hurts so bad.
Yeah.
How do people learn to overcome that pain of rejection?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
You know, in sports, luckily there's a season, which is like you might have 30 basketball games. After you lose the first 2, you don't say, I'm just going to give up the rest of the season.
Yeah.
You keep playing.
Yes.
But in life, a lot of people stop playing.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I think that's great mental training too. I think
Yeah.
sports is great mental training because you have to show up to the next game even if you lost and you don't feel bad.
Exactly.
Like you don't feel good, sorry. And one of the things, before I dive into that question, one of the things that you reminded me of was the Last Dance documentary. So there's that season that Michael Jordan, everyone is in agreement that he is one of the best players to be playing. And they keep losing.
And they didn't make the finals.
Right? They didn't make the finals. They lost. And then they realized they need to get the team. And they need to find, I think they're bringing Dennis Rodman. And then
Yeah.
they start bringing in all these other players that strengthen. Whereas if they would have just said, oh, we got the best player in the world, we just keep doing this, I'm not sure they would have got there, right? But the coach, Phil Jackson, and the team, they had to adapt. And so you're saying, why do we feel that pain in rejection and how do we deal with that? I think we feel that pain because we look at a failure right? We look at it as a complete definition of us, right? We're looking at it as there's that famous statement of like, you know, failure is an event, not a person.
Right.
And I don't know who said it, but it's one of those statements that really clicks. Like failure is an event, not a person. Whereas we start thinking we are the failure. Like we say, I am a failure.
Rule number 6, invest in your strength.
If you had 100 hours to invest in your self-development, in what you were good at, what you were average at, and what you were bad at, how would you split that time? When this question was asked to 200 of the most healthy, wealthy, wise people in the world, what they found is that their percentages were 100, 0, 0, or 80, 10, 10. And the reason for this was very simple. When we focus on things we're naturally good at, and we invest in them, we become exceptional at them. When we focus on things that we're average at, we may get good at them. And when we focus on things we're naturally bad at, we may become average at them. The hard skills that we have, the actual hard, tangible skills that we have, we should focus on our strengths. But when it comes to our qualities or emotional intelligence, we should focus on our weaknesses. So if you have a challenge with something like listening, you don't go, oh yeah, Jay told me not to focus on my weaknesses, so I'm not gonna bother getting better at my listening, right? Listening is a soft skill. If you have a weakness in a soft skill, you want to give that your energy. But if you have a strength in a hard skill, you want to give that your energy and focus. And usually we do it the other way around. If we're bad listeners but good at something else, we let it roll. We say, oh, that's okay, that's not a big deal. But when it comes to things like empathy, emotional intelligence, vulnerability, listening, communication, connection, these are things that we can improve in. And when it comes to our natural strengths, our skills, our hard skills, we can play to those as well. And when we play to our strengths, when we understand our role and our offering, and we recognize that actually that person has their offering, we recognize it's not that we disagree with each other, it's not that that person's trying to take me down, it's just that we speak different languages. We generally talk to people like they're exactly the same. And people generally talk to us like we're exactly the same. We usually expect that people will respond to things in the same way as we will. We just have this lens. Until we start recognizing that there are different wirings for different people, so they all respond to different things. And there's a beautiful statement that's often attributed to Albert Einstein where he said that everyone's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing that it's stupid. And so many of us in our own life are either trying to be something or we're connecting with people differently. All of us can mindfully approach any conversation in the workplace, with a partner, potentially even with a patient or wherever it is, understanding that person's language. The point being that everyone was trying to achieve the same goal. And I want you to do that. I want you to give yourself the benefit of the doubt and the people around you that everyone is trying to work towards the same goal. If we can just learn to speak each other's language, then we'll be able to improve our communication.
Rule number 7, learn how to block time.
You can't be logical and creative at the same time. Your brain and mind is using different faculties and different abilities to do different types of tasks. Imagine you're in meetings all day about numbers and data and analytics, and all of a sudden you're asked to do something creative, maybe write a speech or give a presentation. It can be really, really difficult to switch from one side of your brain to the other side in a matter of seconds. With very little organizing and planning, we're literally going like a pendulum, swinging from one task to another, which is requiring different parts of our brain and the abilities that we have. The way I solve this is that I start every day by first writing down my to-do list. I look at all the activities that I have to do. Now, in the examples I give in this video, I've simplified my task to make it easier, but know that I do this with a lot more detail. You want to draw a line down the middle of the page. On one side of it, write logical, and on the other side of it, write creative. You now want to plot and mark where these tasks on your to-do list fit, either in the logical category or in the creative category. The question you're asking yourself is this task largely structured, focused? Does it have certain boundaries? Is it quite a logical step-by-step process? Or is this creative? Is it more of a brainstorm? Is it somewhere where you need to feel free and expressive? After you've divided these tasks, you now want to write down the time estimate that specific task is going to take. What ends up happening is you start to plot your week by saying Monday is going to be creative, Tuesdays are logical, Wednesdays are logical, Thursdays are creative, and Fridays are creative. Or you may also divide your day up into logical mornings and creative afternoons, or creative mornings and logical afternoons. This division, this time blocking allows you to get really immersed into the activity, really focus, and be more productive and effective.
Rule number 8, find your values.
One of my favorite ways to start is looking at what we value. And values are a very intangible word, and so there's a very easy way to figure out what you value. There's two things you have to look at. You look at how you spend your money, the most painful thing you can possibly do. Go through your bank statement and look at where your money is being spent. That is what you value. The other thing that we spend, just like we spend money, is how we spend our time. Those are the two most perfect ways to see what you currently value. Your value isn't what's in your head, isn't what's in your heart, it isn't what's in your mind. It's how you spend your money and how you spend your time. And so, just to give you an overview, and I share this in the book, that research was done on how we spend our time. And the research showed that we spend 33 years in bed, right? 33 years of our life in bed. And 7 years of that is spent trying to sleep, not even sleeping, right? We spend 1 year and 4 months exercising across our whole lives, these are, by the way. We spend more than 3 years on vacation. And we spend a bunch of days trying to get ready, and we spend a bunch of time, standing in lines and queues, and so much of our time just gets spent. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, where am I currently spending my time? And where do I want to spend it? Now, studies also show that everyone has to go to work, so this isn't about what you do for work. People who had more meaningful, purposeful lives and were healthier, wealthier, and wise invested their time in education over entertainment. And Rangan, your audience is lucky because they get education and entertainment in one place. But that's the goal, right? Like, that's the goal, that you're creating an opportunity for people to find education. The smartest, the wealthiest, the most healthiest, the wisest people in the world were reading books, watching documentaries, taking courses, listening to podcasts, learning to better themselves. And so that's the first place to start. The second place, when we look at that value audit, is I want you to write down 3 things that you're currently pursuing in life. It might be a promotion, it might be a new home, whatever it is that you are currently pursuing. And then I want you to ask this question. Is that your desire and your dream, or is it coming from something outside of you? Is it coming from a pressure of a family member? Is it coming from an expectation because your friend just bought something? Where is that desire truly coming from? And the third and final question you want to ask yourself is, do I still want to pursue that? Or do I want to change how I pursue it? Or do I not want to pursue it at all? And if you go through that 3-step questioning process, you'll get to the truth of what you truly want to pursue and stop yourselves from building a sandcastle which the waves of time will eventually wash away. And so that's what we get lost doing. We get lost building castles that we don't even want to live in.
Rule number 9, do habit stacking.
Here's a way that you can actually get more out of the same time. I learned this from my good friend Arianna Huffington, who speaks about habit stacking. Now, we all have habits in our life that we do every single day without even thinking about it. We're driving around town. We're cooking every single day. We may be on a walk. These are great times to immerse in those activities for sure. When you're driving, to be fully present. If you're going on a hike, to be really there within nature. And if you're cooking, to be really present with the scents, the sounds, and all of the different colors that may be there. But if you're someone who can do some of those things pretty comfortably, you can also add a stack of a habit. So for example, you may be someone who listens to an audiobook while driving. You may be someone that listens to a podcast while cooking or while you're on a hike or walking the dog. It's okay to habit stack in those scenarios to get more out of the same amount of time. I wrote about this in my book. It's called Location Has Energy, time has memory. When you do something in the same place every day, at the same time every day, that space builds an energy and that time builds a memory. What does that mean? When you've done something in one place, like meditated in the same place for a considerable amount of time, that space takes on a meditative energy and frequency. It becomes easier to do that activity in that place. And similarly, when you do something at the same time every day, that time has a memory. Your body, your mind remember that, and therefore it becomes easier to do. Divide your home, even in corners. I remember when my wife and I lived in a 500 square foot apartment, and literally every corner of that room was divided into a meditation corner, a social corner, a work corner, and an eating corner. Even that differentiation allowed you to keep the energy of that space sacred and appropriate for what you want to do. The challenge today is we eat where we're meant to sleep. We sleep where we're meant to work, and we work where we're meant to eat. So we've confused the energy of our environment. That's why we're sitting in bed and can't sleep, because we do so many different activities there. Remove that energy from the bedroom, place it where it needs to be, and allow yourself to see how you use your time more effectively in that place.
And number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is keep on moving.
One of my favorite ways to deal with success is continue trying to be the least successful person in the room that you're in. I think there's those statements of like, never
Always be the dumbest person.
Yeah, never be the smartest person in the room, etc. And I think it's the same with, if you become successful, don't just stand at the top of the mountain, don't just stand at the top of the building, go back down the stairs and keep building and keep living as that person that got you there, because you only got there because you started from the bottom. Right, no one starts at the top, and so you started at the bottom and you built it up, and it was that mindset that you started with that got you there. And so you want to keep rediscovering that mindset and new parts of it, and new parts of that mindset too, where you're always trying to challenge yourself. And so for me, one of the best ways of dealing with success is keep expanding the goalposts, right? Keep widening the goalposts, keep making them harder to reach and challenging yourself, because when you challenge yourself and you push yourself out of your comfort zone, you're naturally humbled. Because you're naturally humbled when you're walking into spaces. I'm sure you feel this sometimes. Like, sometimes I walk into a room and I'm like, how did I even get here?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
sitting on a table and like, why should I be here?
Yeah, like, and there's part of it that's imposter syndrome, and that can have its own negativity, but part of that just lets me feel like a beginner again.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that feeling, and I go, this is amazing, because learning to be grateful and stop just thinking that, oh, I earned all of this and I did it all myself and I'm self-made. You start recognizing gratitude for all the people that got you there. So for me in success, first thing is be grateful for all your teachers, mentors, guides, people that got you there. The second thing is always keep challenging yourself, because the more you're out of your comfort zone, the more naturally you stay humble. You don't stay humble by trying to be humble. You become humbled constantly by trying to do stuff that's out of your league, which constantly makes you prepare, work, deepen what you have.
Study, all that stuff.
All of that stuff that makes you go there again. And then the third thing you do with success is, I think you try and share it with others. You try and use your platforms as an opportunity to give other people a platform so that they can come up as well, because you're reminded of what a beautiful gift you have.
Your whole podcast is about on purpose. What's the difference between discovering your purpose, finding your purpose, living it, and living a purposeful life?
I think that living your purpose is where it's so much about you and your journey, and living a purposeful life is when you're now letting that overflow into everyone else's life. So it's like you want to find your purpose and you want to feel satisfied in that. But a purposeful life is where you are igniting other people's purposes, and it's overflowing with that love and that compassion and gratitude. And that's hard because it takes time. And you can't expect people to do that while they're still filling up too. And I think sometimes everyone will always look like they're finished and they're done and they made it. It's like, no one's ever made it. And you speak to some of the most successful people in the world, and even they don't feel they've made it. And so we are always doing both at the same time. You're always filling up your purpose and you're always trying to be purposeful at the same time, but you're not ever going to be fully in purpose and you're never fully going to be purposeful. It's all a symbiotic relationship that has to happen in parallel.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to your question?
Makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
We live in an age of instant, right? Instant coffee, instant food, instant delivery. Everything's instant. We don't, in one sense, even need to adapt. And I know Google, I've spent a lot of time in the London offices of Google, and I'm sure it's even better here if I'm allowed to say that. But I'm sure that everything's available, right? You guys have everything available. You don't, in one sense, need to adapt. You turn up to work and everything that you need is right there. And that's the society we live in, but I'm talking about how we need to have an adaptive attitude. I had something happen to me about a month ago when I was traveling to LA. How many of you have been to LA? How many of you like LA? Okay, popular over here, yeah. So I love LA, right? I love LA. So I was going to LA and I love social media as well. So I got my phone out and I sent a tweet and I said, I can't wait to go to LA. And I said, I really, really hope I can get tickets to the LA Lakers game tonight because I'm a big basketball fan. How many of you are basketball fans? Awesome. And no one here supports the Lakers, right? Oh, okay, awesome. Good. Oh, nice, okay. And I said, I really hope I can get a reservation at my favorite pizza place because I have a favorite pizza place in LA. Anyone like pizza? Yeah, easy. And so I tagged in my favorite pizza place. I sent the tweet, thought nothing of it. I got on the plane. I usually just go to sleep. That's my usual travel routine. Went to sleep, got off at the other side. I grabbed my bags, got outside, ordered an Uber, of course, jumped in, got off at the other end, was greeted at the hotel by the concierge, went to see the receptionist, and they said to me, here you go, Mr. Shetty. Here's the keys to your room. Here's the card. Told me about a bit of the facilities. And then they said, you know what? We actually saw your tweet. And because of that, we booked you a reservation at your favorite pizza place, and we've got you tickets to the LA Lakers game tonight. They're upstairs in your room, right? Now that didn't really happen. But imagine if it did, right? Imagine if it did. I've had similar things happen to me. These are all hints and tips I'm throwing out to the LA Lakers and my favorite pizza place. But imagine if it did. Now, how many of you, be honest, how many of you were with me when I was saying that? How many of you believe me that it was true? Yeah? Why did you believe me? Because it's possible. Because today it's possible, right? It's not about who I am, I'm not famous. You believe me because it's possible. You believe me because today brands have to know what's happening in a customer's life. Today brands have to be aware of what people are talking about on social media. You believe me because it's possible. But actually, our experience of life is very different. You can do that for things, but you can't do that for experiences. How many of you have had an instant, powerful experience? It's rare. You can have instant coffee, you can have instant food, but to have an instant, powerful experience, on-demand experience, it's not very easy. It takes a lot more work. And that's why adaptive attitude for our personal lives, even if our technological lives are instant, we can't apply that same thinking. And often that challenges us when we're overcoming failures, that we expect things to happen quicker because everything else in our life happens quicker. So the adaptive attitude, a great story is about a gentleman who actually worked at Yahoo. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Worked at Yahoo for 12 years. I think he graduated from Stanford. He had a great lineup of a great CV. He had a great career trajectory ahead of him. But he really wanted to go work at Facebook and Twitter, right? So he applied to Facebook and he got quite far, but then he got rejected. So he sent a tweet. And the tweet said, really nice people, didn't make it in. I hope my journey will go better. I hope this can work out. He then applied to Twitter, got quite far, finally got rejected, and sent a tweet saying, I'm glad I got rejected. It was a bit of a long commute, right? He was seeing the positive side of things of getting rejected. A few years on, him and his friend from Yahoo, they went away and they started working on apps. They thought, let's start a startup, let's start working in that space, use of all of our thing. We've been rejected from this world. Let's try go out there and do something together. They went out there in 4 years, they sold their app to Facebook for $19 billion, right? And that app is WhatsApp. Now, I'm not sure if WhatsApp's so popular over here, but in the UK and over in India when I'm traveling over there, everyone's using WhatsApp, right? And they sold that app for $19 billion. That's Brian Acton, the co-founder of WhatsApp. That's him. He was rejected from Facebook and Twitter, and if you go onto Google and type in Facebook, Twitter rejection for Brian Acton, you'll see the tweets that he posted. They now have millions of retweets, right? They're really popular now. But at that time when he sent them, no one even noticed. And he reacted positively online, sharing his rejection with the world. And I look at that and I think, wow, that's powerful. How many of us, including me, how many of us would be able to share a rejection from a corporate employer on Facebook, Twitter, online, on any of our social media platforms? It's extremely difficult. But his adaptive attitude of actually looking at the good side of things, looking at the positive, moving away from what the traditional person would do through a rejection,
meant that a few years later, he sold it. And the joke that I've heard in Silicon Valley when I've traveled there is that Mark Zuckerberg paid $19 billion for a person he could have hired for about $100,000. So it's amazing. It's an amazing story of having an adaptive attitude, very different to how we deal with technology in our lives, but really powerful of what we can achieve.
You can climb up a ladder, but is it against the right wall? Are you climbing up a wall that you actually want to climb up? If you climb up the left-hand side of the wall, but that wasn't the place you wanted to be at the top, there's no point of being at the top. And one of the reasons why we procrastinate and overthink is because what we're chasing isn't meaningful enough. It's not purposeful enough. It's not fulfilling enough. We don't realize that we're just trying to get up the wrong wall, and we never take the first step because we don't actually care. Put your ladder against a wall that you care about climbing. I know that when I deeply care about the pain or suffering of another that I want to help support or serve, that gets me out of bed more than any other procrastination technique or hack in the entire world. What I want you to do is start scheduling time with yourself in your diary, in your calendar. You would never cancel an important meeting with someone else, but we don't even schedule one with ourselves. If you start by having that time as your meditation time, where you're not on your phone, you're not watching TV, you're not listening to a message or responding to an email, you just sit with yourself and check in with yourself. And you ask yourself, how am I doing today? How do I feel? What do I need to do better? Just checking in with yourself is the beginning of your meditation practice. Inspiration helps us deal with anxiety because when we're feeling inspired, when we're feeling motivated, we're able to use that emotion to help navigate the anxious emotions we're having. The way I like to get inspired is by listening to audiobooks. It's also by listening to incredible speeches. Recently, I had the fortune of interviewing Matthew McConaughey on my podcast On Purpose, and I said to him that at one point in my life, I used to listen to his Oscars acceptance speech from around 2015 every single day. It's only 5 minutes. I would listen to it in the morning and it would give me this boost of inspiration. Instead of starting my mornings with looking at my phone and opening up my mind up to news, notifications, negativity, and noise, I was starting my day with an inspirational word. Maybe an inspirational paragraph from a book you love or an inspirational quote. I think the big thing is we all are looking for role models when we're growing up. Like I feel like we all had someone we looked up to. And I was just fortunate, and I have to owe it to fortune and grace that I was so fortunate that when I was 18, one of my role models became a monk. Because my role models were celebrities, CEOs, entrepreneurs, incredible people who were achieving a lot in the world. But when I met him, I got to meet someone who was truly happy. And I think we meet a lot of people who have a lot of money, who have a lot of success, at a young age, but you rarely meet someone who's truly happy. And I think everyone who's listening right now or watching will be able to remember a time when they felt they met someone who is happy. And I'm sure that's a rare memory, but it exists. And I was so captivated by that happiness that I felt this person was experiencing that I was like, I want that. You know, and you feel that. Like I always say that it's always the common denominator in the room. If you're in a room with someone who has millions of followers, you'll be like, oh, I want that. And if you're in the room with someone who has a yacht, you'll be like, oh, I want a yacht. And if someone lives in a fancy home, you'll be like, oh, I want a fancy home. Like we always want what we feel in the room. Like the person who has the most in the room becomes the most desirable. But for me, I was so fortunate to be in a room where someone was happy, and that became the most desirable thing. And I was just seeing around me, I was aware that I was looking at people around me who had money but were sad, who had the love of everyone in the like relationships, whatever, like the best looking partners, whatever, and they still were sad. And I was just looking around me at 18 and observing that I couldn't meet someone who's really happy apart from this guy. And so it's like, I want that. So I ended up spending all my summer holidays from aged 18 to 22, half of them in bars, steakhouses, and working in the world of finance in London, and the other half living as a monk in India. So I call it my first ever split test or my A/B test, where I was literally like, I'm going to live the paradox. Like I'm going to go from living up large, like, you know, having fun, having the best relationships, drinking, going out, whatever it is, and I'm going to compare that to the opposite. And I can totally say by doing that experiment 4 years later, I was convinced that the experiment of living as a monk was more meaningful, more purposeful, and made me more happy. So I was like, it's a no-brainer. So that's how at an early age, it was just an experiment. And that's why my consistent recommendation to anyone listening is,
experiment with stuff, like try stuff out, go and live it for a week, live it for a weekend. Don't just think about it in your head, like get out of your head and get into action. So if I just thought about it, I probably wouldn't have done it. But getting to experiment with it taught me so much. Imagine you wake up every day with $86,400 in your bank account. And at the end of the night, it's all gone, whether you spent it or not. And then the next day, you get another $86,400. What would we do with it? Every day, 86,400 seconds are deposited into your life account. At the end of the day, once they're all used up, you get a new 86,400 seconds. We would never waste it if it was money, so why do we waste it when it comes to time? Those seconds are so much more powerful than dollars, because you can always make more dollars, you can't always make more time. Because most of us can't see ourselves in people, so then we try and fit ourselves into the boxes that we do see. So it's by a philosopher and writer named Cooley, and he said that today, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. And just let that blow your mind for a moment. It's so powerful. I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. So we live in this perception of a perception of ourselves. Hence, my identity is made by what my parents think I should be. My identity is made up by what my college or university thinks I should achieve. While you're living in that bubble and that echo chamber, getting to what you really want to do is impossible. And often the advice I give to people today is fast forward where you are, look at yourself in 10, 15, 20 years' time, and ask yourself the question, is that where I want to be? If you're in a company, look at the person who's 20 years ahead of you and ask yourself, is that where I want to be? If you're in a startup, look at where other startups have got to in similar roles and go, is that where I want to be? And if the answer is no, then you need to find a new path. We all face distraction. We all experience distraction. We're all plagued by distraction. But often we think that the opposite of distraction is focus. We think that we need to become more focused. We think that if we're focused, we'll feel less distracted. We feel that if we're able to draw our energy in a certain direction and force ourselves to absorb in an activity, then we won't be as distracted. But this is just not true. The opposite of distraction is actually not focus. The opposite of distraction is, wait for it, attraction. What we really need to do is increase our attraction. When we are attracted to something, we're naturally focused. We're naturally able to be present. We're naturally able to bring our attention and our energy to that task, that project, that person. When we're distracted and don't have that attraction, we're naturally all over the place. We end up feeling lost, confused, and end up procrastinating. But no matter what you do, no matter how much you chase your passion and live your purpose, there will still be things you have to do on a daily basis that you don't find interesting. And naturally, you will feel unfocused and distracted. For that, ask yourself this question. Why am I here? Or why am I doing this? And you'll find the mind will start to become attracted to that activity, task, or even that person.
When you talk about detachment,
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
like, that I think is one of the hardest things that we face today.
It is 100%, and one of the ways we were trained, and I'm not recommending this to anyone watching. I'm just sharing how much we are obsessed and addicted to the body. We were trained to not look in the mirror.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't look in a mirror for like 3 years.
Wow.
Right? Like effectively.
No way.
Effectively, yeah. As in, I looked in the mirror now and again when I had to shave my head or like whatever. Like,
right.
But you don't look in a mirror to look at your appearance. I'm not saying that, I don't recommend that before you go to work tomorrow or anything like that, but just listen to the principle carefully.
You're going to get a...
Yeah.
Jay, I can't even...
Yeah.
What do I look like?
Yeah, what do I look like?
No, I'm just...
So the reason is, and that's the reason why monks have shaved heads too, because you focus less on your physical appearance. You spend less time on your physical appearance. What that allows you to do is it literally dissolves your understanding of your physical presence, which means all you have to deal with is the inside. Just think about how much attention it takes to keep ourselves well groomed, to take care of ourselves, to our ego and attachment to how good we look in a minute. And I have it too, right? We all have it. Like, I'm not saying I'm detached from that. But what I'm saying is that we were trained in the belief that if you're able to switch off and close your eyes, why do we close our eyes when we meditate?
Right.
It's because it detaches us from the physical presence of where we are so that we can go inside. Adam Grant says in his book, Give and Take, I definitely recommend reading it. It's a great read. Adam Grant, Give and Take. He talks about integrating your interests and skills with the needs of others. We start bringing those two things together. I often say your passion is for you, your purpose is for others. He talks about the need for integrating your interests and skills with the needs of others, right? Selfless giving in the absence of self-preservation becomes overwhelming. Just focus on that for a moment. Selfless giving in the absence of self-preservation becomes overwhelming. So those are the two areas. If you want to be a giver, you've got to preserve yourself. You've got to refuel yourself. You've got to focus on yourself too. But that's the difference. The motivation for fueling yourself is so that you can give. That's what it means to do something for nothing, is that you're constantly refueling, re-energizing, preserving, growing, evolving, becoming stronger, becoming better, so that you can give, so that you can serve, so that you can be generous. That's when we start activating our lives to become instruments of compassion. We start channeling a higher energy. We start channeling a greater meaning and purpose in our lives. And that's when what you do becomes infectious. People just meet you and they think, wow, like, what is it about you that I'm so connected to? What is it about you that I'm so attracted to? It's that infectious desire to want to make a difference in someone else's life rather than just be growing yourself. 75% of people feel they're not living to their creative potential. 75% of us, it's huge. 3/4 of us believe that we're not tapping into our creative potential. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that we don't have enough opportunities to be creative? Does that mean we're not creating opportunities to be creative? Creativity allows us to express ourselves. It allows us to bring out the fire in our soul, that artistic nature, that ability to create that we all have inherently within us, and allows us to bring that out in a way that other people can appreciate it, that other people can value it. So creativity can change our relationships, it can spark inspiration, it can spark thought in everyday life. Great quote by Steve Jobs, where he said that creativity is simply connecting things. And he said that if you ask a creative person how they did something, they almost feel guilty because it just felt obvious. It feels easy because all they did was connect one dot to another dot, and that's what creativity is. If you look at technology today, even if you look at something like Facebook, we're all tuned in through Facebook. If you think of the word Facebook, Facebook started out as something that everyone would get at the end of their year in college or university, which would be a Facebook, a book of faces, right? That's one thing. Now the idea is, oh, now we can be online, let's connect that idea online, let's take it online. I've just shared a quote from Steve Jobs where he talked about creativity is just about connecting things. So Victor, if you want to escalate, if you want to make your ability to create exponential, you need to be creating or connecting more things. To connect more things, you need to expose yourself to more experiences, more people, more thought processes that often seemingly don't relate. When they did a study, Harvard researchers did a study on 3,000 executives over a period of 6 years, and they mapped what was the most number one skill for the differentiator between innovators, creatives, and non-creatives. There was one thing that stood out. That one thing was associating, the ability to find associations, patterns, rhythms, symphonies, synergy in seemingly unrelated topics, ideas, opinions, and people. Epitome of that, Steve Jobs was able to make calligraphy relevant to designing computers. Who is the person that I need to be, that I can love, that I want to love, that I want to give more love to? Like, what parts of growth are there still available? And there's one thing I want to add, which isn't a question, but it has been a really reaffirming or deepening affirmation for me that I keep reminding myself, and I think it's helped a lot of people that I've shared it with, is literally some days I'll just put my hand on my heart and I'll just repeat to myself, I'm exactly where I need to be. And
so true.
It's just such a great reminder. Like, if you literally put your hand on your heart and you just go, I am exactly where I need to be, you stop getting lost in the future, you stop worrying about the past, and you realize that everything you need to learn, everything you read right now to make a change, it's all right now. It's all right here. And so that's one of my favorite things to repeat. It's not a question, but
It's more of a mantra saying,
correct, yeah. We're always feeling like we either feel like we're ahead, we feel like, oh, I'm doing better than everyone, I'm kind of like winning the game, or more often we feel behind where we feel like, oh, they just got promoted, oh, they just, they got proposed to, whatever it is. Like we're always feeling
they
ahead.
had their first child or
They
whatever.
had their first child, they bought their first house, whatever it is, and we're always feeling ahead or behind. And so when you say to yourself, I'm exactly where I need to be, you realize you're not ahead or behind. And the problem is if you always think you're ahead or behind, then you're always comparing yourself to others. Whereas if you're where you need to be, you now just need to get to the next place of where you want to be.
Yeah.
And also you only get ahead of yourself by first being present with yourself. When you look at material society and our world, we're always fixated on the output and the result and the goal. And the monk mindset is really focused on the input, the process, and the day-to-day habits and the now. And that's not me saying we shouldn't have goals. I have goals too. But what I'm saying is that often that part can seem very uncertain, right? Right now, it's hard to set goals. Results are uncertain and the future is uncertain. And the monk mindset actually starts from the back and goes, wait a minute, it's actually our input, our intention, our current process that creates the future that we need and want. And yes, there are everyday things like whether kids are going back to school, whether our jobs are coming back there. And, me and Brendan were talking about this earlier. And Brendan, as a fairly large company, I have a smaller company, but there's people that are dependent on me and families and things like that. And so when I think about all of that stuff, I realize that all I can get certain about is putting my next step forward. And I think it's kind of like when you're walking, you've become so comfortable walking, you don't even realize, but actually all you're doing is putting your next step right. You can't think about what's going to happen in 100 steps time because you haven't walked over the ground there. And you don't know how the ground is going to change. So for me, the monk mindset is how do I just place this next step? Not perfectly, but how do I place this next step with my best intention, process, and habits possible? And what does that require? That requires me to be connected internally to my internal guide. And what does that require? It requires me to find that stillness and space so that I can actually listen. We're wired for generosity, but we're educated for greed. I think I just said it to you 2 years ago when I was on the podcast.
Yes.
And it's like, and when I said that in the statement,
so
it was, and it's so true. We're wired for generosity, but we're educated for greed, because what happens is when we're kids, you'll see kids
you want to share.
Go out their way. They want to share.
It's part of my candy bar, whatever,
totally,
right?
Yeah. And then as we get older, we're told that there's less. And this is what the key is. As we get older, we're told there are finite numbers of how many kids get made onto the basketball or baseball team.
Yes.
We're told there's a finite number of college spaces. We're told there's a finite number of how many tickets there are. We're told there's a finite number of people that are successful. Guess what? In the theater of happiness, there are infinite and unlimited seats. And there is a seat with your name on it.
That's so good.
There is a seat with your name on it in the theater of dreams, in the theater of happiness. But you think that because you think that there are only 100 people allowed in, that if someone else makes it before you, that you don't get in. And guess what? Is there a cap on how many billionaires there are in the world?
No.
No. Is there a cap on how many millionaires there are in the world?
No.
No. Is there a cap on how many happy people there are in the world? No. And that's why I really am encouraging Forbes. I want Forbes, forget printing a rich list, print a happy list, print a service list, print a list of who is serving.
We should do that.
Who is serving the most in the world.
Wow.
Right?
That'll be competition based.
Yeah, sure.
I gave more than you gave.
Yeah, and that's why it should be service based on time, energy, and money. Because we should start showing how much time people give, how much energy people give. Mother Teresa, I don't think she gave any money to her charities.
Right.
But she gave a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
You know, you look at all the people who made a change in the world, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, like, they may not have given a lot of money to stuff.
Yeah,
they gave time and energy.
You don't have to give resources, but your resourcefulness, your love, your time, your focus, your attention, your compassion.
Love that.
Resourcefulness of the heart, not of the wallet, I think is
Love
key.
that.
And you don't need to have a lot of money to make a big impact.
You don't. Yeah. And this is the training. See, we've been educated for greed because we've been told everything's limited. There's limited number of this, limited number of this, number. And every time you play in numbers, and I think it was Bob Marley who said it, but every time you play in numbers, you'll always be dissatisfied because guess what?
Someone's always have more.
Someone's always gonna have more. I was speaking to a friend recently, And this friend was telling me that he bought a home, which is very expensive.
Yes.
Very, very expensive. And he went to a party at someone else's house. And he told me that when he was getting a tour of this party, he found out that this person had a painting on his wall which cost the amount his house cost.
Shut up.
And so he was joking with me. He was like, that guy's
Painting in the house.
He's got my house on his wall.
Wow.
And that just puts things into perspective. And you think about that, and then you look at someone like Jeff Bezos and you think, oh, well, he's the richest man in the world, but does he have the most fame? No, he doesn't.
Right.
Does he have the most beauty? Subjective decision. Does he have the most strength or power? Maybe not. And so no one has the most of everything. So when you measure yourself by numbers, you'll always be second, third, fourth, fifth in something.
I want to know, how close to encapsulating the notion of thinking like a monk can you get? Like if you were to give somebody just a nutshell notion of what that means, what would you say?
I'd say it means to live a life in alignment. And what that means is that you live a life where what you think, what you say, and what you do are aligned with your truest self. And what I mean by your truest self is the self that was not given to you by your parents or by your education or by media or movies, or not the self that you've created to function in the world. So I think if you strip away all of those expectations, obligations, and opinions, what you're left with, if you live in alignment with that, then you're thinking like a monk. For me, breathwork's really important because I really feel that we experience one of two things. We're either experiencing our mind ahead of our body. So everyone's had that experience where their mind's racing and the body's like, ugh, I'm just tired, put me back in bed. Or we experience the other extreme, which is the mind's feeling really tired and the body's having to rush around. So the mind's like, oh, give me a break. But the body's like, no, but I need to do this and this. And so for me, breathwork really realigns my mind and my body in the morning and brings it back together. Because when I wake up, I can be really creative sometimes. Be like, oh my God, I've got a million ideas of videos I want to make. And I'm like, no, look, just calm down. The body's not ready yet. Or you wake up and if you do, which I really avoid now, but if you do look at your phone first thing, got all these messages coming in, your mind has to go from 0 to 100 miles per hour in 2 seconds, literally like the fastest car in the world. And the body's just like, oh, look, just give me a break. I just woke up. And so for me, Vipassana and breathwork just allows me to align my body and mind. So that's why I do it. I read an incredible study that changed the way I create and think. And it said that the human mind can't be logical and creative at the same time. How many of you have ever walked from a highly creative brainstorm where you were fueled with passion and then had to talk about numbers and business and, right? It's tough, right? Anyone ever found that quite difficult? It's quite challenging and the mind's like trying to run from one side of the brain to the other side of the brain. So what I do is I create in depth. So I go really deep into my creation and then I go really deep into everything else that I have to do. So before I went to India, I created my content in advance. And so when I was in India, I was able to really switch off. So the beauty of being able to be in India for 21 or 30 days, or wherever I am in the world for that matter, I'm then not having to think of creativity as stress or pressure. I'm able to do creativity as a form of passion and service. And so when I was in India, I was able to not look at Instagram. I was able to not look at Facebook. I was able to completely switch off for 21 days when I was there earlier in January. And I started my year in the way I wanted to. So I was meditating for 8 hours a day. I was spending time with my teachers who are mind-blowing and incredible and trying to learn from them and taking knowledge and wisdom from them and continuously praying to be of more service this year and make a difference this year. So that's how I chose to spend my January. And I had so many people saying to me, they were just like, Jay, it's January. Things are going well in your career. How can you take 21 days off? Right? That pressure, that noise of like, things are going good for you. How can you take time off? I was like, things are going good because I'm doing this. Right? I had one of my teachers that has kept saying to me for years, he goes, if you want to move 3 steps forward, you have to go 3 steps deep. And so if I'm not going forward, I know it's because I haven't gone deep. So for me, that's a big priority for me. And that's what I try and do. I try and do that every day, but I also believe in immersive experiences. So a lot of us today, we live in this world, which is like 10 minutes a day. Do it for 10 minutes a day, everything will be great. And that is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But imagine you spent with a boy or a girl, your partner, whoever it was, someone that you just started dating. Imagine you spent 10 minutes a day with them. How long would it take you to figure out whether you wanted to fall in love with them or not? Probably a long time. And so when you go immersive, if you spend a weekend away with someone, you know whether you like them or not. And meditation, mindfulness, all these habits are the same. The more you immerse yourself, the more you get an experience that stays with you, the more that you can live with that experience and keep going back to it for 10 minutes a day. So I really believe in immersive experiences. I love the 10-minute-a-day advice, but I also deeply believe in having a deep, immersive, absorbed experience that completely takes over your whole body, mind, and soul.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Tony Robbins, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
You get all excited, I'm gonna do this, and then your brain goes, I've never done it before. Oh my God, what did I say? I don't know how to do this. And they tend to focus on how to do it. And when you start with how, you're screwed. Like,